Well, as Devi Ji said, today we're going to talk about one of the very interesting books that we have taken from Master's teachings, one of the wisdom series, and it's how to achieve your true potential. So there are actually three questions here implied in that title. One is your true potential. The second is how to achieve it. But the third, most people pass over, and that's the question of who are you? Who is this you that we're talking about? If you are going to achieve your true potential, who's this you? Because there are two approaches to the question, depending on how you define that. And of course, we know, because of the great teachings of India, that we're more than just this one body in this lifetime and this personality in just this lifetime. We're actually the soul. And so if we're talking about how the soul achieves its true potential, that's very different from how you as an ego, which Master defined as the body, the soul identified with this body and this personality. That's the ego. So how the ego achieves its true potential is very different from how the soul achieves its true potential. Almost the whole of humanity is driving toward achieving something more, something greater, to accumulate something more, acquire something more. But it's always ego-driven, or virtually always ego-driven. And that means if you're trying to achieve your true potential in an egoic sense, then society tells you, well, the first thing is you get a good education. And as we all know in India, the drive for a good education and the pressure on the children to achieve high marks is very great, because that becomes the doorway through which you can eventually go on and get a good job, get a good income, and acquire a position and acquire the goods and wealth that most people are seeking. But that's, and so we could talk about how to achieve that. And there are thousands of books and instructors that are quite willing to help you achieve that. But that's not our true potential. That's the potential of the ego. The potential of the soul is actually quite different from that. You know, the thought of, first of all, you get a good education is not necessarily true. One of the great saints, and one that I met personally, Anandamoyi Ma, was illiterate. And we hear of saints who are illiterate. And yet she had really achieved the true potential that we're after. Anandamoyi Ma ever permeated joy, mother of joy. It's the real goal of all life. And we seek these other things, the egoic things, hoping that they will lead to that happiness, hoping that they will ultimately result in joy. But they don't result in joy, because the only true joy is in our consciousness and in our soul. Anandamoyi Ma said that the true food for the mind is joy, and we will always be hungry until we learn to feast on that joy. And so learning to feast on that joy is the real quest that we're after. Well, once we shift our quest from the ego to the soul, then many of the things that are very important in our lives, as long as we're leading our lives according to the realm of the ego, the realm of Maya, those things that are very important in that realm become, if not unimportant, they become more or less irrelevant. So as I said, education. In fact, Master used to tell a story about two students who came to a music teacher, and one of them was already a good musician, or an experienced musician, and the other one had no experience at all and no training whatsoever. And the music teacher said that he would charge the completely new student half as much as he would charge the experienced student. And the experienced student said, well, that isn't fair. I already know so much. And the music teacher laughed and he says, yes, I have to work twice as hard to help you unlearn what you have learned incorrectly. And so the ego is like that. That's why Master told the story, is that the ego is like that. We come thinking that we're well trained, thinking, okay, my mind is very sharp. I've learned how to question. I've learned how to seek answers. I've learned how to analyze. And when we sit to meditate, what that creates is a kind of a monkey mind. We will never understand the realm of true spirituality through the extension of the mind. Logic is not the tool by which we understand samadhi, not the tool by which we understand the finite mind can't grasp infinity. But so what the meaning of that is that we have to begin to look at other tools and other questions. So what then, if we can distinguish between whether we're trying to achieve the full potential of the ego or the full potential of the soul, then we can come back to the question, how do we achieve the true potential of the soul, and what is that potential? So what is the potential of the soul? The potential of the soul ultimately is to reunite with that which we already are. So we are trying to, I don't know, we're not trying to learn something, we're not trying to achieve something other than what we are. Master, when we say Master, of course, we're referring to Paramahansa Yoganandaji. When Master named his organization in the West, he named it Self-Realization Fellowship, not God Realization Fellowship, because he wanted to make sure that people understood that they weren't trying to achieve realization with God as if God was something outside of themselves. They were actually trying to achieve realization of their own true self. And once that realization of who we really are, once we've achieved that, then we also understand that we are the God that we were seeking, but that God has become each one of us. It's not as if the egoic self is now somehow elevated to the position of ruler of the universe. I mean, there are fools who think that way, that if I meditate deeply, I will become the ruler of the universe and I'll be able to manifest all sorts of wealth and all sorts of, but if you're already a master, then those things, as I say, become irrelevant. And so the true potential for the soul is what Master described in Autobiography of a Yogi in his great poem Samadhi, that the consciousness expands and it achieves endlessness, it achieves timelessness, it achieves unity with God, and therefore unity with all of God's creation. When we are everything, then it ceases to become irrelevant about how much we own. It's like asking, how many of your own cells in your liver do you own? Oh, I'm going to acquire more cells and make myself rich. Well, it's just irrelevant. That which you already are, you don't need to reach out and possess anymore. And so that great poem Samadhi, of all the poems written in English, that best captures the state of unity with our own self and unity with God. Time ends, space becomes either finite or infinitely small or infinitely large, but it's all a realm of consciousness. And from that great state, as Master put it, I, the cosmic sea, watched the little ego floating in me. So that great I, that great sense of self, is infinite. And in that, we can see the little egoic self, because even a master takes on a body, and even a master takes on a personality. The difference is that he or she doesn't identify that as being the totality of who they are. It's one tiny little part. It's the little ego that floats in the sea of the vast consciousness with which we're endowed by the Creator. And so we're really just trying to get back to the sense of our own self. It's as if the ego, or as if the soul, is just temporarily dreaming this dream life. And we're trying to awaken from that dream life. Most people only awaken when they leave the body. So one of the ways to talk about achieving your true potential is that we have to withdraw the life force from the senses that keep us constantly engaged in the world, constantly enmeshed, and the mind, it becomes kind of in a miasma of hypnotized thought that everything is so real and so important and so anxiety producing, and what if I can't control this, and what if that happens, and people are just eaten up with worry and with doubt and with concerns. And if they aren't concerned about themselves, they're concerned about their family, and if they aren't concerned about their family, they're into politics or they're into something, but the mind wants to worry, and it just goes that way. One time, many of you know our dear friends, Nayaswamis, Haridas and Roma, who are in charge of our center in Bangalore. And maybe Bangalore people are watching now, I'm not sure. At any rate, Haridas had a mother who had a tendency toward worry. And there was some problem going on in the family, and she was just eaten up with worry for about a week. And then whatever she was worried about never came to pass. And she said, well, I wasted a good worry with that one. But how many worries do we end up wasting with, thinking about what might happen and all the possibilities? All of that just engages the soul into the little world of the ego, this body, this personality, my family. Master called it us four and no more. And so we get so involved and so engaged in that it seems to be the only thing that's important. And in that, it is easy to forget that, in fact, what we go through in this life is not very important, but what we become of what we develop, the qualities we develop, what we're able to become through what we go through in this life, that in fact is very important. So everything that comes to us in order to help us develop certain qualities, one of which is not worrying about things. We were discussing politics with our dear friend Devi, who is just visiting, just here from India. Most of you probably know him. We weren't discussing politics for very long because he simply said about politics, he said, I trust that Babaji and the great ones understand how to run this world, and I'm not worried about what happens with this party or that party, that whatever's happening is what they're wanting to happen in the long scheme of things. And so some people can get so concerned and so wrapped up in politics and things that they can't control at all, but it eats them up from the inside. We're trying to get away from all of that, get into understanding that the greater self is capable of this state of consciousness where we exit the petty concerns of the ego. We're completely outside of the ego. So first we have to withdraw the life force, and then we have to bring it up and concentrate at the point between the eyebrow to keep, to produce a deep magnetic, one might say magnetic force or magnetic field there. And as we produce deep magnetism in the spine and at the point between the eyebrows, then the energy naturally withdraws from the senses, rises up the spine, and ultimately unites at this point. And when that happens, then we go into the state that allows us to become once again what we really are. So our true potential, the true potential of the soul, is to expand outside of the ego into the infinite consciousness, the infinite joy, the infinite being, the infinite awareness from which we came. And the way to achieve that, the how to achieve that, is through deep meditation. And Master said there are two parts to our path: deep meditation and selfless service. And if you combine those two together, then you will, at least if you don't achieve your true potential completely, you will be well on your way, and that momentum will carry you. If you don't achieve your true potential, for each of us, if we don't do that in this life, then we'll have to reincarnate in another life until we do achieve that. But even the attempt, as Krishna says in the Bible, that in the Gita, excuse me, Krishna says in the Gita that no effort is ever lost, that which we achieve in this lifetime, we will carry forth into the next lifetime until ultimately we find the joy of our own one being.
Hello. I'd like to share with you a little now. First of all, it's so nice to see so many friends sitting there in Panchil Park. And I believe I see Gorja there towards the front. Hi, Gorja. I want to thank you for your very sweet letter. I appreciated that very, very much. So Master tells a story in one of his excuse me, in one of his written articles. It's called The Lion Who Thought He Was a Sheep. And the story goes that a little lion cub wandered off from its mother's lair and wandered out and far away into a meadow. And there it was joined by a flock of sheep. And since it was just a little cub and it didn't know any better, he just kind of blended in with the herd of sheep and was grazing, would wander around with them, and one of the mother sheep adopted him. And even though he grew up in different ways than the other sheep, he just always thought he was a sheep. And he learned to baa like the other sheep, and he learned to kind of bounce on all fours and then eat the grass from the meadow. And he went on this way for a long time. And then one day, another lion came into the area, and he roared, and all the other sheep ran away. But this lion, who thought he was a sheep, somehow that roar sounded very familiar to him. And so he kind of looked up, and this lion came up and said, "What do you think you are doing? You are a lion." And he said, and the lion sheep kind of went, "Bah, no, I'm just a sheep." And the lion took him by the scruff of the neck and dragged him over to a pond. And he said, "Look at yourself." And he looked in, and he realized he didn't look like the other sheep at all, and he looked like this other lion. And from then on, he awoke and realized, no, he was really not a sheep, but a lion. And of course, this is the Master in his simple, deep, beautiful, humorous, loving ways, telling us a story that we are all identified. We are lions of soul awareness, but we become identified with the little sheep of the ego, and we think we're weak, and we think we're frail, and we think we're not strong, and we think we're not smart, and all of these things. And really, it's just this, we're misplaced. That's all it is. One time, Jyotish and I were driving in the city of Seattle at night. We were trying to go from one event to another, and we got very, very lost. And we ended up driving and ended up in the warehouse district of Seattle along the railroad tracks. And luckily there happened to be an old truck driver sitting in his truck cab, and we went up and we said, "Sir," it was late at night, we said, "Sir, can you help us? We're lost." And he said, "You're not lost, you're geographically displaced." And I think for all of us, we are spiritually displaced. We think we're a little lamb and our little sheep, and really our souls are yearning and desperate to know who they really are, to be free of this false identity. Now, Master tells us that a spiritual teaching has to be true on every level to really serve humanity. So on the physical level, it needs to be applicable, on the mental, emotional level, and on the spiritual level. So much of Master's teachings are about energy, to awaken the latent energy within you. And of course, we know from the practice of the energization exercises, which really I want to give a little plug for the energization exercises, because for years I didn't think they were very important. I did them out of discipleship, but I didn't see the direct connection between them and, say, the practice of meditation or the practice of Kriya. But the more you do them with concentration and really willing the energy, the more you realize that when you sit to meditate after practicing energization, it's the same ability to direct and raise the energy that we learn in the energization exercises. So Master says the greater the will, the greater the flow of energy, and the greater the flow of energy, the greater the flow of magnetism. And this was such a foundation stone for all of Master's teachings, energy and magnetism. So if we're talking about on a material plane, physical plane, achieving our own potential, if we start with these basic principles of energy and magnetism, because if we want to achieve, for example, better health and a better sense of well-being, without heightened energy, this really isn't possible. And a good kind of visual image to illustrate this is there's something called a rheostat, a switch on the lights where you can dim them or turn them up brighter. And for most of us, we don't have our rheostat on the physical plane, not to speak of the other planes. It's not turned up all the way. We're dim light bulbs. But through the use of understanding the principles of developing greater energy and the concomitant principle, then that energy draws magnetism. So let's say we're not feeling very well, but we're really trying to put out energy, and that begins healing our body. But then our magnetism draws to us someone who says, "Oh, I know you have this problem, and I can help you with this herb or this practice," whatever it might be. And so we draw the things we need for physical health and well-being, enhanced energy, in the realm of accomplishing things in our life. More energy gives us more mental focus, more the ability to concentrate. Some of you have heard this story, but early on, when Swami was always training us by his example, and he didn't explain it, but he would just do things and it would change us. One day he invited a group of us to come over and paint the inside of his dome. Some of you have been to Ananda Village and seen the dome where Swami resided. And so a group of us went over and we were painting, and we began in the morning and we were painting, and then about lunchtime we took a break. Swami said, let's take a break, come back after lunch. And I was working on painting. There's a great big hexagonal six-sided picture window overlooking a beautiful forested river valley. And so I was painting the beams on that hexagonal picture window. And we were just painting and painting. Swami was also painting a different part of the room. And then at a certain point, we just were concentrated. No one was talking. We were going about our business. At a certain point, Swami said, well, it's been a good day. Let's call it a day. We can, whatever we haven't finished, we can complete tomorrow. And I looked at the clock, and it was 3 o'clock in the morning. And we had painted from about 1:30 in the afternoon till 3 in the morning. But he was showing us the power of concentrated, focused energy and how much could be accomplished through that. It was a wonderful lesson. And whenever I think, oh, I don't know if I want to do this, if I'm too tired, I remember that day. And so for each of us to turn up the rheostat through energy and magnetism, both for our physical health, for concentration and focus, and also for success in whatever we're doing. Because Master, as I said, these principles should help us on every level. And when we're trying to accomplish something, concentration and focus, of course, magnetism to draw the people or the situations that will be helpful to us, but also positive thinking that I can do this. Maybe it won't happen right away, but I will keep trying. And again, Master tells the beautiful and delightful story of the two frogs, the big frog and the little frog that hopped along, and were hopping along one day, and they hopped into a bucket of milk. And the bucket sides were too steep for them to climb out and too high for them to jump out. So they were just paddling and paddling and paddling. And they were getting more and more tired. And finally the big frog said, oh, I can't go in anymore, and I'm just going to give up. And he sank to the bottom of the pail of milk, and that was the end of that incarnation. But the little frog said, well, I'm so tired, but I'm going to give it one more try. And just with that determination, he kept paddling and paddling. And then all of a sudden, he felt something coming up beneath him. And it was, he had paddled so hard, he had churned the milk into butter. And it became a lump, and he rested on that lump of butter. And then he was able to hop out. Well, that's, again, the principle of success. Energy, determination, and just stick-to-itiveness. And that's really the story of Ananda. Jyotish and I have had the extraordinary blessing of watching this work grow from the very beginning. And believe me, it has not been a bed of roses. It has been a steep uphill climb every step of the way. And yet, at this point, it's so gratifying to see how Ananda is able to help and inspire and uplift people all over the world. But Swami Kriyananda just gave us that example. If you want to achieve anything in life, you keep trying and keep trying. And so on a physical level of health, of success, of mental focus, to use energy and magnetism to achieve our potential in those realms. But then, as Jyotish was talking, there's another level of achieving. And a great mystic of the West, St. John of the Cross, said, if you want to know everything, desire to know nothing. If you desire to have everything, desire to have nothing. If you want to be everything, desire to be nothing. And ultimately, to achieve our true potential, we have to cast aside all of these things. We were just talking with a friend the other day, having lunch at our guest retreat. He's a man who has been a very successful businessman. We met him probably 25 years ago in Dallas, Texas. He was part of the Ananda Center there. And over the years, he's made fortunes and lost fortunes, 2 or 3 times actually. And he's a man of Indian descent living in America, but a dear friend. And so he was talking with us, and he said, you know, I've made and lost fortunes, but now at this point in my life, I'm about to retire, and I want to live in an ashram like Ananda Village. I realize that everything that I've gotten, it hasn't made me happy, but I really want to find meaning in life. And it was wonderful to hear him say those words. We were waiting for that for a long time. So he and his wife are planning to move to Ananda Village. But all that to say, the true potential is that which goes beyond all these other levels of achievement. The true potential is to really realize that the only thing that brings us comfort, the only thing that brings us fulfillment, the only thing that really in which we can rest in ease within ourselves is awareness of our soul nature, of who and what we really are. And once we begin touching the hem of that garment of our true potential, we can walk through this world with inner freedom, because there's nothing. Swami has that beautiful song that he wrote, nothing on earth can harm me. Rise, O my soul, in freedom. Rise, O my soul, in freedom. Nothing to fear anymore. And that's the potential that we're all seeking, to just roam through this world like a child of God, with trust, with faith, with confidence, and with the sense of our own oneness with everything. Just as that we quoted the lines of that mystic, if you want to feel one with everything, you have to strive to be nothing. Because as long as there is a sense of the importance of the ego, the uniqueness of our own ego, the importance of our own ego, we're separating ourselves from a much greater reality. So ultimately, what is our true potential? Satchidananda. As the Swami Shankarananda described God, ever existing, ever conscious, ever new bliss. That's our potential. And we will be forever unfulfilled until we know that. And we are so, all of us who are following Master's teachings, we are such great good karma to find these teachings that will really bring us to what we're searching for. Master's mission was, the more I practice his teachings myself, and the more I see the impact on the world at large, the more I realize that what a gift to the world it was when he and this great line of avatars came. It wasn't just to give us a nice little, well, you know, these teachings are nice and let's go on about our life. He was a revolutionary. He was a warrior to bring divine consciousness into this materialistic world. You know, today, or I should say yesterday, your time, we had what we have at Ananda Village, our annual Rajasi Day. And Rajasi, as you know, was Master's foremost disciple, and he was a great success in the world. So we call it Rajasi Day, and it's a big community work day. And there were maybe, I don't know, maybe 200 people of us gathered this morning in a big circle. We chanted and prayed, and then all morning long, people were just doing all sorts of chores to make beautiful this Ananda Village, cleaning up the gardens and taking out old things that needed to be removed, and working in the fruit orchards, and on, dozens and dozens of projects. But we started with a big circle, and we all were chanting and praying before we began our workday. And afterwards, a friend of mine who lives at Ananda Village came up to me And she said, I want to share with you something. She said, about 20 years ago, I was living in Southern California, and I read autobiography of a yogi for the first time. She said, I wasn't at all a devotee. I was working in the corporate world and had a nice life and nice job and nice possessions. But she said, I read autobiography, and there was a statement in there in which Yogananda said, if you can think of God for 24 hours, it will change your life. And she said, well, this is what she told me. I didn't have anything to do that weekend, so I thought, why not try it? So she said, all day Saturday, I just tried to think about God all day long. And she said that that night, as I say, this was 20 years ago, she said it was more than a dream. It really was like a superconscious experience where all of a sudden I was flying out of my body and I was flying across these beautiful astral meadows and these beautiful blue lakes just with diamond sparkles in them. And then all of a sudden I came to this circle of beings, and they were beings of light. And I knew I was supposed to go and be with them. And I went and I stood there and they were chanting and I felt their light filling me. And then my friend looked at me and she said, this morning as we were standing in the circle preparing for our service day, she said, I realized that my vision was of Ananda and the beings of light are the devotees of Ananda. And we in ourselves are nothing, but Master came to transform us into beings of light. And this we can do through his grace and through sincere practice of his teachings. As Master said, no one goes home empty-handed. This is his promise to us to fulfill our true potential. And we're so happy to be joined with our Guru Bhais throughout India in this great, great mission of our Guru, and to march forward together to help share and to live in God's light. So, namaste. And we want to now invite you to ask questions on any topic you would like. It could be what we've shared or anything else you'd like to, that came to mind that you'd like to ask about.
I had two questions,
Yes.
but I'll ask the one that is for someone else. I'll ask that first. There was this lady who called me from where we have a small group there, and the group leader there has been undergoing some personal family issues. But his issues, however they've been resolved or not resolved, the devotees are getting disturbed that if this gentleman is so much on the path and chanting and praying all the time, and if this can happen to him, then what about us? They are very upset, many of them. So what can I'm going there for a while, so what can I give them by way of comfort to bring them back to their original?
Well, this is a kind of a difficult question. As I understand it, if the leader of a group and one who prays and chants all the time and meditates has so many problems, what can other people expect? Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
Well, one time, a long time ago, Indian Swami came here, very high soul, and he gave a satsang, and Devi asked him a question about how do you stay on the path for a whole lifetime, because she was just starting out. This was early in the history of Ananda. And he gave an answer that was very important for her, but also important in this instant. Don't compare yourself to other people. Each person is they have to form their own relationship with God. Now, sometimes, coming back to this man, sometimes people have a kind of karma that is very turbulent. And he may be going through a patch where it's somewhat temporary, but it's turbulent. And we have many, many devotees who go through a difficult patch of time, and then they emerge out of that karmic period and become very balanced, very positive, very able and functional. And so but it is difficult. I certainly agree that it's difficult when you see somebody that you're trying to find as a model, and yet their behavior is not something that you want to model your
man, not to have negative reactions to this man, but to pray for this man. And then if they can do that, then they will have passed the test that was for them. And then I think the group will readjust and be purified. And if this man can't get out of this turbulent period of life, then maybe another person can take over. But the main thing is not to judge or condemn him, because that only clouds our consciousness. Okay, so are there other questions? Before you had a second one, but let's see if somebody else has another question. And then if there's time, we'll come back to you, just to give everyone a chance. Gorgia.
I had 3 questions, but I'll just take one of them right now.
Okay.
It seems like in the world, when people experience troubles, just like how Rashmi was saying, experience troubles and they want to not have troubles. But if Master and even you have said that this world is a platform for us to grow spiritually. So like if somebody wants to be self-important, and Master would say, no, that's not how you're going to grow. So they'll try to bring themselves back to a level of humility. And that's how you grow. So this world, it seems we are learning to find our.
Okay.
The video broke up there a little bit, but we understood the essence of the question. Yes, we should not try to avoid those tests that come to us, because the tests are drawn to us by our own soul wanting us to learn, basically wanting us to learn new kinds of attitudes and new strengths within ourselves. We have a friend who lives in Delhi named Indu, and he was with Swamiji in the early days when Swami was there in 1958, from 1958 to 1962. And Indu was with him. Well, Indu said that many years previous to that, he attended a lecture that was the most powerful lecture he ever had gone to. And so he had to pay some money to go to the lecture. And there was a large group gathered there. And the teacher, the Swami, came out and he said, remember this, everything that happens to you is meant for your next step in your spiritual evolution. And he walked off. That was his whole talk. Then 5 minutes later, he came back. He said, remember this, everything that happens to you is meant to prepare you for the next step in your spiritual evolution. Walked off again. 5 minutes later, he came back and said, remember this, everything that happens to you is meant to prepare you for your next step in your spiritual evolution. And that was it. He walked off and didn't come back after that. So 3 times he said that same sentence, and that's also the answer to your question. Everything that happens to us is meant to come to us. Our soul has drawn that, and it's meant to prepare us for the next step. And sometimes people get on the spiritual path and they think, oh, now everything is going to be easy and I'm not going to have any problems. And it's not as if God actually puts brambles in our way, but it seems like he does. But those tests are going to come to us. They're meant to make us stronger, to make our minds powerful, to make our energy strong, to make us magnetic, and most of all, to make us want to reach up to our own highest potential. So don't run away from things. You don't also need to try to attract them to you. They'll come automatically like mosquitoes at night, you know. So you don't need to try to draw them. They will come. But when they come, face them head on and learn whatever it is they're trying to teach you.
Okay, let's see if there's another person with a question. Okay, in the back. Let's see if we can hear you. Hello, namaste.
Come forward. Yeah, it's been a wonderful talk.
Oh, we couldn't recognize you from the back. How are you, Mr. Gupta?
Nice to see you.
Wonderful talk. The question is that in Mahabharata, Duryodhan says, he tells Krishna, I know what is the right course of action and what is the right thing to do, but somehow I am unable to do it. Now, most of us are in the same dilemma. We know what is the right action, like getting up early in the morning, doing meditation and various things. So how to boost our determination? Can you have some advice for us on this? How do we pursue the right path?
That's a very good question.
It's a very good question. We have a good friend who one time said to Swami Kriyananda, she said, oh, Swami, it's so hard to know what to do. And he said, no, it isn't. You already know what to do. You're just not willing to do it. And she laughed because it was true. So as Mr. Guptaji is saying, often we know the right thing to do. It's how to do it. So there are a few things that can help that. And partly this comes from scripture, partly it comes from experience. One is that we have to strengthen our willpower and the power to do what is right to do, as opposed to that which we want to do. What we want to do is determined by our past karma and our past habits. And so we tend to be wanting to do that which is familiar. So we have to strengthen our willpower and have some discipline in order to do that which we know is right to do. Master said the way to strengthen willpower is to take on a small task, but one that's a little bit difficult, but that you know that you can achieve. And then do that. Don't allow yourself in any way not to finish that task. And then take on a little more difficult one and so on. He said that will strengthen your willpower. Reading and listening to the voice of Master will strengthen you in your conviction. His voice carries tremendous magnetism. And then the final thing that I would say is that satsang helps a great deal, because when you're in association with other people, they will, as the right kind of people, those who share your aspirations, their energy and their magnetism will help even a kind of a weak resolve. They will help carry you along in the stream of their energy, and that will help a great deal. Finally, just pray to the Guru. Pray that his strength reinforce your own attempts.
Yeah, I will just add briefly, the one point I was going to make was attunement with the Guru, because when we feel that the Guru is guiding our actions, then there isn't the, as Master put it, the thwarting cross currents of ego. And that's what gets us in trouble. We know what we should do, but the ego said, oh, it takes too much effort. I don't know if I'll succeed. You know, maybe I want to cut corners and not do things absolutely honestly and up to snuff. But when we feel that we have attunement with the Guru, things become simple. We just know the right course of action, and we don't have to fight about it inwardly. The inner conflict is over. That's the peace. It says in the Bible, the peace that passes all understanding. And that's when we feel the presence of God and Guru. And Master said one of the highest prayers is, I will reason, I will, I will act, but guide thou my reason, will, and activity to the highest end in all things. And so we have to act in this world. Again, the Gita and Mahabharata, as you have studied and written about so eloquently, Mr. Gupta, it's a call to right action. But that following the course of right action is much easier when we, again, in Mahabharata and Gita, where Krishna is driving the chariot, and then we don't have to say, oh, we need to go this way and that way and up and down. We just follow the course the Guru has set for us.
Yes, what would have happened to Arjuna if he hadn't had Krishna driving his chariot when he slumped and in the evening before the great battle? So having the Guru there and having him on your side is the most important of all things. And of course, he had his brothers with him, which represented satsang. And so those two things especially are the important things that we can have.
Well, I think our time may be coming to a close. So our love to all of you throughout India. I do want to give you greetings from Daya and Keshava, particularly to all of you in Panchil. They are taking seclusion now in the guest house at Crystal Hermitage, which is right next to where we live. We haven't seen them, but they arrived on Friday. They came over, had tea, and then they went into seclusion. But they're going to have 2 weeks of just deep meditation and rest, and people are bringing them food for their meals and so forth. So anyway, they said they knew, of course, we would be having the satsang, and they said, please to convey to all of you their love and their gratitude for letting them take this break, and they'll be back in India before long. So God bless you all, and have a day filled with, let's try, as my friend did, try to think of God throughout the day, and maybe you'll be flying in the skies of astral bliss. Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.
Thank you so much. And please convey our love to Leah and Keshwar. We are missing them. Thank
When
you.
they come out of seclusion, we'll convey your love to them.